A few videos back, as I was looking into chapter 23 of the book of Ezekiel, somewhat of a complete correlation appeared to me when I read a particular verse, and that would be verse 6. We'll read it, but the correlation was between a 1970s sitcom entitled Gilligan's Island, and it's a complete connection, not just a singular, but a complete connection in every variable of its intent, of its imagery, of its symbology. Now, immediately it should come to mind probably the two most prominent symbolic features will be the color red, the color blue. The skipper, the captain of the ship, is wearing blue. His first mate, Gilligan, is wearing red. From there, at least in my mind, the next thing that sticks out, at least in reflection of what we've been talking about, would be the name of the boat. SS Minnow. And if you can't see now how that is just screaming out manifestation of what we've been talking about, you will. And then at least the next most prominent symbology for me that I see in reflection of what we've been talking about will be two particular women on the show. One goes by the name of Ginger with red hair, and the other goes by the name of Mary Ann. She has dark hair. And then we're going to see how Ginger and Mary Ann are the perfect intended projection of Aloha and Aloha. And that's going to be, in essence, two sisters that are born from the same mother. And we're going to see that the first older, more ancient sister, Ahola, is considered a feminine descendant of Samaria. Very important, because we're going to link this back up to Samaria, and then we'll link this back up historically to red hair. We see that the more recent daughter of the same mother, considered the sister of Samaria, is considered Olaba. And then we see that both of them played the harlot. And it's just incredible, because you're going to see this very same thing in reflection of what Jesus Christ is talking about with Satan's kingdom being divided. You'll see these two symbolic daughters descended from the same mother, the same family, the same folly, the same temptation that would be traced back to the scriptures from Genesis 6. But as you see now, they are rejecting one portion of themselves, which in all reality is the portion of themselves that they have originated from. And this is where Jesus says their kingdom is divided, it's going to fall. The division of their kingdom and how they're seeking to divide it can be understood if you look at the symbols of this Gilligan's Island program. And I say program with pun intended, as they intend you to sit calm while they're programming you. But we see that the program is now backfiring as an expose of truth that reveals what their real intent is the entire time, no matter how many of their agents that come along now and seek to confuse the details. You know? And then weighed against these scriptures and the information, some of the historical artifacts that we've already produced in this series, you should easily be able to see what's going on. You should easily be able to see that it is Satan's kingdom divided that is seeking to cast off the greatest portion of itself, that only a small remnant, keyword remnant, of Satan's kingdom is being saved, while the rest of these people are being made to think that they are, getting them to promote the work to continue to deceive the masses, when in fact they themselves are going to be the very victims of the sacrifice, the very victims of the blood sacrifice that they're now by default masters are planning for them, marking them as the Reds. When in all reality, it's the Blues that are the Reds themselves, but yet switching the imagery by default of this lesser mirror onto the populace, even the youthful populace of the United States. And if you haven't basically taken a good look around at the feminine youth of this country, they're all dyeing their hair red. And they don't even know why. Well, basically because they're following the idol shepherds who are dyeing their hair red. Okay? But in essence, when I say they don't know why, because they don't know why, it's a part of propaganda and deception against them to get them to volunteer themselves as the sacrificees, get them to volunteer themselves as the whores. And then in essence, that judgment from that high hand of these supposed immortal men of Osiris Orion on the dark side of the moon are going to cast the stone against them and then feel justified in doing so. In essence, because they've tricked America, at least the deceived youth of America, who now has some sort of suicidal tendency by default of the propaganda and asking for it. You know? I guess ask and you shall receive. You might want to realize what they are making and tricking you guys ask for. Because by default, the reception of it is not too glorious. But we see what goes around comes around, right? Do unto others as you would have done unto you. The high hand is going to experience its own stone, plain and simple. So you should understand, at least by now, that who would Samaria be? And then, of course, historically, Samaria, you could look back and see is connected with this red hair. Well, Samaria would have to be Ginger. And then we see that the Jerusalem daughter would have to be Marianne, the dark hair. This will show you, in essence, who they're seeking to cast off from their own kingdom that really come from the same family of mistakes. It's incredible. So let's look a little further here. But before we do, let me show you the verse here that prompted the occurrence of this information in my mind. And it would be verse 6. But basically read this for yourself leading up to verse 6 that you can understand. Verse 6. Which were clothed with blue, captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses. Well, there it hit me. Blue captains. And then instantly I thought of the captain, the skipper of the ship of the SS Minnow, wearing the blue shirt. And then immediately I thought of his first mate, his little buddy, so to say, Gilligan, wearing the red shirt. And I thought of Gilgamesh. Very important. So let's go ahead and take a look at some things here. Let's not let this go over our head, though. Think about this more ancient sister that you're going to see being paired with red hair. The name Samaria. Let's go ahead and isolate that. Sam Ara or Sam Arya. And then let's identify that, of course, with the sacred feminine, at least how I've revealed that they were laying with these sons of Sam. And that would be Samyeza. And now we see the backwards march of supposed spirit progress has proceeded ever since into the pit by default. So it's no accident that we see the most ancient, at least depicted here. And what you'll see what the catch is that this is not that ancient in essence. It goes back further. But we'll just have to talk about that a little later here, probably in the next few videos as I get a chance to get to it. But you should see that this Sam Arya, ancient daughter, is in direct reference to the sons of Sam. As I told you, are connected in symbolism to asses, as you should see as it develops with Assyria, which you should understand is connected further to Aryan traits. And then it would continue down here to the same symbolisms of the asses. So at this point, you should easily see that Gilligan's Island is speaking and emplacing symbolically these two historical figures from the Bible, chapter 23, the book of Ezekiel. And that would be Ginger and Marianne. Now let's just take a brief look here at a few of the things that I find highly relative here. Let's just first look at the title of the boat, the SS Minnow. Now, we have seen where this SS translates to many things that are relative of almost an equational progression of understanding for those that can have it between the safe and sound, as we saw that it really means sealed in essence with this sound, this essence of frequency and vibration, and that we see that is relative to crystal, in which in reality is storing these frequencies, or at least these residual personalities of these fallen in spirit form, as we've realized at least at the Giza necropolis underneath the pyramidal complex associated with the bands of Orion, the great hunter. And as you saw in Ezekiel chapter 19, these descendancies being depicted as young lions being taught by this original mother, we're teaching them to become great hunters. Of course, the symbolisms here between the sons of Orion and Osiris as great hunters will manifest. So the SS Minnow. Now the SS now further develops who was sealed by this frequency of sound and vibration, becomes those sons of Sam. It evolves into the truth of itself. It will support itself, validate itself along this continued equational path, traveling it in the correct direction. So if we see the SS Minnow in reflection to the safe and sound sealing, now in reflection to the sons of Sam who were sealed, and then at least I've done my best to reveal the connections to them with Osiris Orion, that great hunter, well then would not the fractal, or should not the fractal, portray that truth in the next title portion of the name? And it does, Minnow. So it would be SS, the sons of Sam, or in other words, the men of O, the men of Orion, or the men of iron. And then you guys should be familiar with that, because then that's where you get your iron cross from. That is so familiar to so many people, but in yet the wrong way, where they can't really identify what the real problem is with this symbol and what it portrays. So moving on here, not too hard to see now that the skipper, the skipper is a captain of a boat. He's wearing the blue shirt. It's just kind of interesting to see that the manifestation that they give the skipper now, at least this blue, is, kind of an overweight individual. He's not really so young and desirable as he was depicted in the scriptures. I mean, that's more or less a truthful manifestation of these blue bloods, is it not? As we see these present monarchies, these present aristocracies, these powers that be associated with the ascended elite, they're really not too, they don't really reflect the imagery of where they supposedly have come from, at least where they believe they've come from anymore. There's been a digression of evolution, if you will, and my point is that the skipper character will at least portray the truth of that. And then at the same time, there's an opposites with the Gilligan character, because we see that Gilligan is really portraying, at least from their standpoint, their attempt to try to do this, Gilligan is in portrayance of Gilgamesh. And as you see, that Gilligan would be the first mate. The first mate, or at least the first offspring of the mating, they want you to believe, would be the Reds. It's not. It's not. It would be more commonly referred to as the blondes, which would be the white. The white. And then this is where we get the connection with those three particular diverse colors of that eagle in Ezekiel chapter 17 with red, white, and blue. And that we really know that the red is not so red in and of itself. It is more orange but yet they're seeking to implement the stigma of the red as the color for the favor of sacrifice for the unknowing, unwitting, unintelligent, seemingly, at least in this instance, populace of the United States. Who they're tricking into accepting this symbol for themselves, and which you should understand that this symbolism of the swash of red is who is being selected for sacrifice. So Gilligan now is, at least in their mind, trying to depict this Gilgamesh. But notice that he is really not too intelligent, and that he's not this very masculine, strong, robust figure any longer that he was depicted in ancient times. Exactly the opposite that we see that the skipper, in essence, is now portraying. Okay, at least by the scriptural standpoint of the ancient caricature. With blue captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men. Very important here to see that there's much more that can be said in it, but I at least want you to see at least the polar opposites of this symbolism that has taken place. So you should understand that Gilgamesh is not the first mate, that this relates a later descendancy, and that we're going to get into this as we start talking about the sealing period, something that happens before the 40,000 year period from our standpoint looking back, and then the things that happen after the 40,000 year sealing period, or at least after the 40,000 year period of the relative Genesis 6 coming together of these daughters of men as it's perceived. And then we will see that, we'll see more or less that the daughters of men lay with the fallen well before the 40,000 year marker, well before the conceived notion of the Garden of Eden event. And we'll just have to talk about that in the next series. And it, in essence, could be revealed here as we go further and we talk about it. So at least what I'm trying to tell you is they are trying to at least pin these identities here, but yet the opposite of the polarities, in which in relationship almost gives you the manifestation of the shortchanging that they feel has happened to them as a result of something that's gone wrong or at least been taken away from them, that they're trying to get back. So Gilligan, in essence, being the first mate, would fulfill the intention of what they're trying to project by the propaganda or the deception of these Reds. And as you should understand, if they would be the Nephilim descendancy, and then now you see everything with Wendy's, Burger Kings, and McDonald's, in essence, the reflection of Esau being tempted with the food that you see, in essence, being done with the deception of Jacob to win the birthright. It's all right here. It's all right here. It's all right here. So Gilligan would not be the first mate. Historically, you should understand that it would be these blonde-haired descendants, even in the depiction of Noah, as he, in essence, was perceived to be a union of the Nephilim, in which you should understand at least the lineage will prove that reflection to be true. But yet, as they've distorted the lineage, they've tried to write that out. But yet, they've missed a few key factors in Genesis that pretty much makes that impossible. They've overlooked a few things. So nonetheless, now we see the connection to the island that they're supposedly stranded on. Okay? Stranded in the ocean of their own existence, maybe? And anybody that understands Hindu mythology, which is heavily related to all of this, heavily related to Mayan, Egyptian, and even Israelite mythology, philosophy, theology, religion, all rolled into one thing. Okay? Being that they're stranded in the ocean of their own existence, is not that the abyss, in essence, where we see that these ancient beings were sealed up, at least in a twofold manner between the living descendants and then their spiritual descendancy as they became deceased, and then two separate locations for at least that portion of them were created, and then one for the reflection of the holding of the souls is underneath the pyramidal complex, which was built later, in essence, as an attempt, in my opinion, to retranslate souls, if you would. Or maybe that's what it was perceived as by certain features of the architecture and the stars that they targeted. And I'm talking about the star shafts with the king and queen's chamber. But nonetheless, we do know that there is something under there. something scripturally in multiple forms, not just the biblical canon, but outside of that, quoting the book of Enoch at least as one, we see that there have been locations that have been specifically created to store these souls. Okay, but then we know that there's a living descendancy as well. Well, it's all there. We see that in both forms, we see that they're both stranded in the ocean of their own existence. And you can see that the entire cast is portrayed is stranded in the ocean of their own existence, as they've been sailing on some sort of craft of knowledge, in reflection of this SS Minnow, or the men of Osiris Orion. We see that they have basically beached themselves upon their own choosing. They've beached themselves upon their own fault of their own choice, which has now become the wasteland that they are confined in. Is that not true with the book of Enoch, where they were warned even by Samyaza before they undertook that oath to go forward with this plan to take the daughters of men, that they knew something was going to really happen to them bad? They realized they were going to be sealed for that 70 generations period, which we have uncovered, which is basically about 40,000 years. Okay. But we see that they came in unto the daughters of men well before that, at least the original Anunnaki did. And then the portion that we're talking about that is sealed after the Edenic account is the Nephilim descendancy that we see Ezekiel is relaying to us in chapter 23 between these two sisters, which are basically laying with the Nephilim descendancies, not the original Anunnaki. But you would see at least this projection in the Gilligan's Island Code is trying to portray that with this first mate, Gilligan, which is not hardly the first mate, as you should understand. But that fulfills what they're trying to do, in essence, with the deception and propaganda, by getting the youth, at least the feminine youth of America, to portray themselves as redheads by choice, by dyeing their hair to do it. Dyeing, keyword. So stranded in the ocean of their own existence, which would be the abyss that would fulfill Job chapter 38 after lines 1 through 7, starting at line 8 forward. Pretty fitting, right? So we see the daughter Haola is Samaria, and then Sam being key here in relationship to sons of Sam. Now we know who at least they're laying with and who they're trying to portray this to. Ginger becomes the character, and then we see that the hint with the ginger in a negative light today has carried on perfectly in reflection of the stigmatism of sexual promiscuity, in reflection of a harlot or a whore, right? We see that Ginger is the star, the movie star, right? Red hair. Of course, she's trying to portray herself in that white dress. If I'm not mistaken, she wears the daggone thing the entire episode, in which you should understand that would be the opposite, of course, of what the portrayance of a virgin is supposed to be. As you see, that's how they're trying to portray it. Blasted train. No worries. I got try to maintain a thought here that I'm hoping I can explain to you here with this Hollywood mystery of the Reds now, and how they are almost, really working hard. Like even the Scientology thing is all wrapped up in this. Obviously they understand the scriptures. Obviously they understand the prophecies. Obviously they understand that somebody's going to be lifted up and that it's recorded that they're going to be destroyed. You see that they're even setting that up themselves? You see that? And as I said, they're almost getting a huge populace of these people that are blind to become the willing participant as the sacrifice. On and off world, if you get my drift. And the idol shepherd plans on leaving the flock in 2 locations. That's right. So the ginger becomes the star in association with the red, and that you should understand where the jinn or the ginger is coming from. It's coming from the ancient Arabic term with jinn, that would be a reflection of these supposed fallen spirits that were being held in these vessels, that you had to know the right magic incantation or formula, aka ritual, to get their presence to appear to you, if you would. No secret here how that basically is going to equate itself into the symbolism of horror, in projection of even Hollywood itself, the scandals, everything all about it. It's almost like they purposely advertise that, you know? They want you to see that. Can't you see? They are going to seek to shift their identity at the end of the flip of the switch. Let's go to Aholaba, and we have Marianne. Mary, the Virgin Mary, right? But remember, the Bible tells us that these two daughters, both of them are whores. Both of them come from the same mother. Both of them laid with portions of these Nephilim descendancies. Both of them. And as you should see, the dark-haired one, Marianne, appears. Now, who are they trying to depict as Marianne? Give me a second. Well, it's right there. There's your dark-haired Marianne. Okay? And Mary Ann, the Virgin Mary. And then think Anne. You have to think that Anne over and over again with this symbolism, with this combination of masculine and feminine. Even with the word mena, man, and then Anna. Masculine and feminine joined once again. We'll just have to take another approach with this name Anna later, but there's something super deep that fulfills a very interesting niche here. But as you can see, here's where you get this casting off, where Jesus has already declared that they are going to divide their own kingdom and have been dividing their own kingdom. At the same time, you think that they're making their kingdom larger and welcoming more of you in, they're actually selectively casting more of you out for destruction. For destruction. And you can see who's unknowingly playing the symbolism of the harlot and the whore. It's the feminine youth of America right now. And you want to follow these punks? You want to follow these people and their agenda and deception? The whole time they're pointing the finger at Christianity and discrediting Jesus and the truths that he lived, and at the same time trying to hijack his teachings as their own, but yet not living them in any way. At least unto others, We see that the deception is really what they live out unto others. The secrecy, Truth ain't no secret. You got the truth. You got the truth. Give it. Give it freely. You don't need no commercials, advertisements and endorsements for the truth. Truth doesn't need none of that stuff. All the truth needs is a willing ear to give it hospitable lodging. That's it. And the truth will take up residence in your Zion, which is not a dry place by default any longer. It is a place of the living fountains of waters, Jesus Christ, that will continually give unto you, as I am a witness he's given unto me. So, my friends, there's the deception right there. There's the deception right there. It's right there, guys. It is right there. Both are whores by default. Biblical context will prove that, but yet they seek to cast one portion of themselves off. As I said, it even goes to the reflection of the singular eye and then now to the division of the brain. It's all a product of them being unwhole, and that they are sick and by default do need a physician. Those that are not whole need a physician. Those that be whole need not a physician. So, here comes your two fours once again. And there's your 44. And as I said, there's the division between the two. One being openly made a As I was going to say, here's your 44 here. Here's your division. The proof of the division that I was showing you in so many other ways. One being made an outright whore, and then a huge majority are being deceived into openly advertising themselves as that. And then the other, which is the same fruit of the same whoredom, is now deceptively presenting itself as something other, when in all reality, it has literally become the chosen whore to bear this burden, this beast of burden. I'll be back.